It's the most.
Sorry, I just realized I'm sitting way too close to the camera now too.
Yeah, you are
It's like,
making me
Mr.
uncomfortable.
DeMille, ready for my close up. Sorry, I'll back up.
Welcome back to Pluck That. I'm Nick Ciraldo, and I'm joined with my wonderful hosts, Mike Boyd and Jonathan Bass. Welcome back, gentlemen. It's good to see you again.
Wonderful to be here as always.
Oh, Bass has left.
Bass has left the building. The
Is it
hunger was
something
too
I
much.
said?
No, it's just preparing for my news.
Oh, well, let's get into it.
So sadly, uh, there's a local music store, like so many of our beloved music stores, brick and mortar, that are going out of business. And one of ours is going out. And I mean, I'd stopped by a few months ago, and they had a Verbzilla. Of course, you can run across these on Reverb and blah blah blah, but I don't need more pedals. Most people don't.
What's a Verbzilla?
I'm getting there. And so, anyway, I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need this. But if it's there when I come back, because I don't get by too often, I was like, if it's still there, it'll be a sign that I need to get it.
Bass walked out the door and came back 5 minutes later.
Exactly. Exactly. No, but a couple of months went by, and I did get the news that they were going out of business, and I was like, okay, well, stop by, see what's up. And I'd honestly forgotten about the Verbzilla. It was still there, gentlemen.
Ooh,
Yeah,
shiny.
it is. It's nice. Actually, I framed that quite well for the pod. Nice. You
So,
still see my face, and you can see the pedal.
what does it do?
Now, it's a reverb pedal, but it's remarkable yet unremarkable, and that's its beauty, right? Because it does what it does very well. It's one of those like not so secret secrets, I don't know what to say, but it's a solid reverb pedal that, it's a line six, the tone core series. This section right here is actually modular, right? You can typically take these out and replace and just seed it right into the pedal thingamabob thing. And anyway, but the Verbzilla is a fantastic reverb algorithm that has been around forever, and I think everybody should own one.
And God, it's been what discontinued for what, like 20 years or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, legendary.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. That's my news.
Nice. Boyd, what about you, sir?
I can piggyback on that news. That same music store, I really like those cats. Bass and I spent many a day kicking tires there. I like chatting with them. They had good stuff. I like to try to give them business when I could. Gosh, I guess it was last summer when I was visiting you, Bass, and we went in. There was a tube tester in there, and this will be maybe I should have waited on this as a bit of a lead in, but with our guest today, he has a podcast that I listen to about working on vintage gear and vintage amps. And one of the things they're always talking about is, you start small, do little things here, there, if you can find this gear. And one of the pieces of gear that people often talk about is one of these tube testers that can be hard to find a working one, expensive now if you can get one. Well, almost bought it right there. And it was kind of one of those signs when Jonathan told me they were unfortunately closing. I said, well, they still have that tube tester. And he said, well, I'm going to go up there and, see if I can, do some business with them before they close. And sure enough, he wrote me back and said, they got the tube tester. I said, get it. And so Bass was kind enough, there she is, to get me this tube tester. So I don't have to collect my tubes and send them off to my amp tech 3 hours away whenever I'm ready to do a repair or something. First, I got to learn how to use it, but I'm excited to have it.
If you're listening to this and not watching, Bass is holding the tube tester up, and it looks like a torture device from a Bond film from the 1960s.
Exactly, or a lie detector.
It's like, Mr. Bond, I'm going to start on level 3. All these knobs and dials and paper.
Sliders.
Yeah. Now, okay, so I'm the newbie to amplifiers and tech and everything, as y'all both know, a tube tester. So you're telling me that you might have a tube amplifier and something's not working, and you take a tube out, but you can't tell by looking at it if it's bad. Is that the deal? And so you sit it on this tube tester, and you can see, is it just basically yes, no, working or not, or can you also test its, I don't know, capacity or power or strength or anything like that?
Partly, yeah, it'll tell you whether or not it's working or it's cooked, and if it's working, how much life is left in it. Just these little, like preamp tubes I'm holding up here. They usually last a long time, especially old vintage ones, new old stock, but newer ones just don't have the longevity, but the prices have gone up, especially for the standard ones that tend to be used in guitar amps, your 12AX7, especially your power tubes, 6V6s, 6L6s, things like that. So if you can squeeze a little more life out of them or know that it works, I think it's worth it to me to invest in that. And if this tube, this is one of the ones that went out recently. Jonathan, when he was here for your clinic and master class at the end of the fall semester, played my amp, and I brought it home and noticed, the power was fading. And sure enough, I replaced the phase inverter tube.
I don't like this passive aggressiveness. I did not do that to your amp.
You burned up 2 tubes, Jonathan.
I did not.
You cooked it, bro.
But it may be good to work in another application somewhere that, maybe only, in some amps they may have one triode and one may work, or it may be just fine for a reverb driver or something like that. So, yeah, I'm very excited to have purchased one of these. I'm very excited to learn about it, to see if I can indeed use it and maybe be more of a benefit to myself. If people around here, I don't know how many people in the area still do any kind of repair and stuff, and it's not like I'm trying to find a side hustle, but if I have friends who, need to check a tube, I'm happy to do that. I gotta learn how to use it first, though.
All right. Boyd's Tube Testing Laboratory and British Super Spy Torture Device Center.
That's probably more like what it's going to be. I'm probably going to shock myself or blow something up.
I really wanted to test some tubes, but I did not want to destroy your toy, so I'm not going to do it.
Well, if I can't learn how to use it, Bass, I'm going to go through Venmo and just ask for a refund for that.
Yeah,
so
that's not
just
gonna
give you a
happen.
heads up.
Not going to happen. Don't forget Verbzilla.
I do want to check that out.
It's good stuff. Good stuff, guys. Go get a Verbzilla.
Good news. Very good news. I think that leads us into maybe not the good, but the bad, the rants. I think we have a little rant, don't we?
Mm.
Lord of
Bass?
mercy, do we?
Bass,
Yeah, it kind of came via Boyd here. He sent me a link about a week ago, astonished at the price of a guitar. And so that started a conversation on our Marco Polo that we've had before, and really it is sort of a generic gripe about the basically the why everything is so expensive, right? And so if we're really honest with ourselves, I can stop this rant because, everything is expensive. But sometimes, I like I've told Boyd before, as we look at a lot of these really high-end boutique, bolt-on neck guitars that are going for $4,000, and I'm not saying they're not incredible because they are. Sometimes, it's just you're just like, man, is 4,000 the new 2,000? Because I feel like I remember not too long ago, these boutique guitars being between 2 and 3,000, not necessarily, four and up. And so, and this was going on before the tariff, fiasco, which is also bullshit. Yeah, that's a whole other rant. So anyway, but sometimes I do have the generic gripe of like, seriously, like, am I really, is Fender really wanting $2,500 or whatever it is, for a standard professional Telecaster? You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
they're great guitars, the professional too. I have a professional Stratocaster. It's a fantastic guitar. Yeah. Is it now worth, 2+ grand? After tax, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
is it really like, and also is that where we're at as far as, just working musicians needing an American made Fender, or, and I'm not picking on Fender. I mean, I could easily go Gibson or any other American made, guitar. It's just, is that really where we're at? And $2,000 is a lot of money, you know, for just a bolt-on neck working person's guitar.
So I got two responses. One, I have a theory. There is no limit to human greed.
True. Yeah.
Number two, I'll make a connection to the watch world because as you guys know, I'm a watch enthusiast. I have a small collection. I love reading about watches. I love working on watches. Um,
Are you technically a horologist?
um, I guess so. I guess that's what an horologist is, someone who's into the whole world as opposed to like somebody who works on them. But yeah, you could call me an
It is a fun
horologist.
word to say.
An
Yeah.
horologist? Yeah.
Horologist.
Horologist. Horologist. It is fun to say.
Fun to listen to.
Anyway, so I knew about watch prices in general before the pandemic, and then I saw them surge during the pandemic. And, there were a lot of theories as to why that happened, but it definitely, we definitely saw a global watch price bubble. Things just exploded. For example, a $7,500 Rolex Submariner was going for 15,000, literally twice as much, and it just skyrocketed in a matter of months. And it got to the point where affluent investors were being advised by their financial advisors to buy a bunch of watches, even if they weren't into watches, because they were now seen as assets like stocks. They were gambling on all this, and that ruined it because they didn't settle down to where they were before. And people
Yeah.
started to continue. There was an influx of watch enthusiasts. There now is, fortunately, a lot more people who are interested in watches, but now the watch dealers and watchmakers know about this, and they're just ramping up these prices to unseen numbers. And we're also seeing watchmakers who are they're regardless of its quality, they're definitely pricing them to look like they are superior. In other words, they're saying because we're charging $50,000 to
Right.
$100,000 for a watch, we are special. Just because we're charging, like they have the
Unmitigated audacity.
to to charge this amount, and their watches are no better. And so the connection I'm going to make to guitarists is that for someone like me, a humble watch enthusiast, I'm now priced out of anything that I read about and really am a fan of, like the history of a company, the quality of its construction, where it's from, what it does, et cetera, et cetera. I can't afford it anymore. And now going back to guitars, here we are, serious players, professional players who want professional instruments, and we can't afford them. I mean, I had an American Strat in the 90s. I paid $750 for it, brand freaking new. And now you're telling me it's over $2,000. That's 30 years. That's a and you know, that's just seems like an insane increase in price, not just inflation.
Yeah.
And my real the price is one side, or paying more for a name or what have you is a topic unto itself. But if you do pay that price for that professional level instrument, by God, that quality control needs to be there and backed
I
up.
know where you're going with this.
Yes, this is my biggest problem. I've got a friend that I work with. He was working at a local music store, and this has not been that long ago. Twice this has happened on, and I don't mean to pick on Fender. If I do this for any reason, it's and they get wind of this or hear it, it's like, please, I love Fender. I mean, all my
Same.
electrics now are Fender inspired. Fender's rock. There's so much history, and it's glorious. I don't want to see that compromised. But he's on two occasions, and they're both Telecasters, professional two Telecasters that came in. One of them, beautiful guitar, he picked it right up, flipped it over just to take a look at it, and one of the set screws for the pickup fell out. How did that get past quality control? On another one, he went to plug it in to play it before they put it up on the shelf, and check it out and the setup and all that. Not making a sound. They opened it up. One of the ground wires to the pot just was not even soldered. How did that get out of the factory without someone plugging that in and just giving it a strum to make sure everything works? Or even just put the multimeter on there, make sure current's going through. That never would have passed muster. And the problem with fret leveling now, or having gaps under the frets, that's a problem that Gibson started having 20 years ago, and we know what that has meant for Gibson now. And Gibson charging high dollar instruments that are beautiful works of art, but you can slide a business card under gaps in the frets, or if it's not
Yeah.
pounded down. A friend of mine found like the gaps filled in with super glue on. That's unacceptable at that level. That should never happen. And if they're letting that happen, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, and it's also not acceptable to, I mean, little like they're not even upgrades, right? I've taken, actually, it was not a Fender, right? But I've taken two guitars to luthiers for other, like, just unrelated, whether it's setups or I'm swapping out pickups or whatever over the years. They automatically just switched my input to a Switchcraft, right? No charge, no charge. They're like, yeah, this is ridiculous. You should have this. This is just standard. Why is that not standard for the manufacturer to do? It's not that much more expensive. If it was super expensive, then my tech that I took it to, luthier that I took it to, would have charged me, right? I mean, I'm sorry, that's anecdotal, but it's nonsense,
Absolutely. Yeah, the extra 50 cents, if you can't absorb that to put a part in a guitar that is going to last longer, perhaps the lifetime of the instrument. I mean, so many of those parts going in, 6 weeks later, those poor jacks can loosen up to the point where they don't make good contact, much less what you're looking at 2 years down the road. You shouldn't, once that guitar comes in and is set up, you shouldn't have to worry about cracking it open to replace little things like that every few years down the road.
Yep.
Yeah.
And especially on a professional level instrument. Absolutely.
That's my overall point. I mean, if you're dropping 2 grand on a guitar, there should be no, room for like you take it in for a setup to have like how you want it to be set up, and your guy say, "Oh, I switched out that crappy, jack with a better one, right? No charge, don't worry about it." Like that's ridiculous. It's insane. $2,000? Are you kidding me? Like if I'm like dropping, I don't know, $500 on a guitar, then I would expect that sort of thing, right? I would expect to have to get it set up, maybe put some new, better pots in there, a new input jack, whatever, but I mean, 2 grand, really? That's my rant. Is that where we are right now? Like, is that solidified? Is is 4,000 the new 2,000 for boutique, and is 2,000 the new, whatever for just your basic, entry level professional, bolt on deck, professional guitar. Sorry, entry level, contradicted professional, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, there may be some silver lining. I mean, this could be what we tell our wives. Look, 4,000 is the new 2,000. So I'm just going to have to spend that much on this guitar. I'm sorry.
I will say, since we're talking
That's the lead in right there for this episode.
well, right, perfect. Oh wow, Nick might have rehearsed that one. That's too perfect. But this is one of the reasons why, as much as I love some of these great historic brands lately, I have gravitated to the boutique builders for that higher level of quality control. Because if I'm going to be now at that price point for an off-the-shelf instrument, by golly, I can justify going to that. Plus, it's like the small business. I'm supporting a small business now. The way we want to do brick and mortar locally instead of going to the big box stores or the big .com places. I feel better about my decisions, but I also realize I'm in a different place financially now than I was, say, 20 years ago when I was still acquiring some of these things. But sorry, it's probably going on way too long, but I dare say that, we're talking about putting that level of quality, jack, another $1 maybe, and they buy in bulk, so it's not that much. Maybe it is, but why not put that on the beginner instrument that is going to survive? Because some kid's going to just not, realize what he's doing with the beginner level guitar. He's going to bang that guitar into things. That jack, if it's that sensitive, it's going to get banged around. The parents are going to get ticked off. Like, I just bought this $300 guitar and it's broken 6, weeks later or something like that. Put that higher level in there so everybody across the entire consumer base has more confidence in the product. I just think that would be a wise choice. Case in point, one of my students bumped into his amp. The cord was sticking out of it, and it was dark backstage. And when he did, the jack was soldered onto the PCB, and they had to replace that entire part of the PCB because the jack was plastic and it broke, and it just could not be replaced by soldering a new one into that PCB. It should have been two things, separate from that PCB and not plastic. An amp that I've had for 25, 30 years. There's a gig a couple of Christmases ago where someone had been drinking too much and ran behind me where I was set up, ran smack into my amp the same way. It bent my cable, the barrel coming out, it bent it at about a 30-degree angle. But by golly, that jack, I mean, I never lost a connection when he hit it or anything. That amp moved about 2 feet and sound just kept pouring out of it just like always. And it's still just fine. But it's not attached to that PCB board, and it's a metal jack, and the cable took all the damage and brunt, and the amp is fine.
Yeah, and you got off with a misdemeanor after you attacked him, too, so not that bad.
Not that bad, yeah. Sorry.
Well, that was a good rant. Good discussion. Thank you, gents. Moving on, Dr. B?
Well, I think it is time for our incredible guest. We always seem to have such incredible guests on this show. We were very fortunate, but this one's rather unique. We have not only someone with a background in music, but someone in the publishing industry, and the publisher of what I dare say is becoming the premier guitar journal, because it is so diverse, it is so well crafted. And Jason Verlinde, publisher of Fretboard Journal, really seeks to make connections with people across all demographics of the guitar world, from beginners to the advanced. I do remember someone commenting, maybe there was a quote on his site that called it the guitar magazine for adults. And I think there is a little something in there for everyone, but it is so beautifully crafted and put together. I'm a huge fan, as you will probably see me geeking out when I finally get to talk to him in person. But I say we don't waste any more time. Let's get on and welcome our guest for tonight. All right, welcome back, everyone. I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled to introduce our guest today, the absolutely amazing and amazingly busy Jason Verlinde of the Fretboard Journal. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the invite, guys. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I've been following the Fretboard Journal and so many of the things you do for a long time. I took a very deep dive into the podcast during the beginnings of the pandemic, as one does when we're isolated from others. And oftentimes I'm a little bit amped up before these things, but hearing the dulcet tones of your voice puts me in a very familiar and comfortable place now. So okay. I really appreciate that.
I'll take it easy, Boyd.
So, the Fretboard Journal, in my opinion, and many others, you have quite a following, has really become quite the premier resource for all things guitar. I feel like we're already very much kindred spirits because you cultivate such a diverse audience. You've got an incredibly supportive fan base, and impressive catalog of performers, industry leaders that contribute to what you do. But there may be quite a number of our listeners who may not be familiar with you and what the Fretboard Journal does. I wondered if you might take a moment just to tell us a little bit about your background and what all you do.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, I grew up in Northern California. I was a music journalist. Back in the day when alternative weeklies existed and people read about, who was playing at the local clubs, I used to write a lot of those articles and review albums for those kinds of things. And then I moved up to Seattle in 1998 to work for a startup that we now know as Amazon. That was just selling books at the time and decided to get into the CD game. And they hired a bunch of music journalists and record label people and people from record distribution channels. And we built in a very short period of time the Amazon Music Store, which was the second store that Amazon, the second product line that Amazon carried. While living up here, 1998 to 2004, 2005, working for the man at Amazon, I got the guitar bug. And I did not get rich. I am not retired at all. But I did buy, my first real guitar, a Martin D15. I got really into guitar culture. I started to interview bands and ask them more about their gear than about their new record. And it was at that point in my career where I did the ballsy thing where I'm looking at the newsstand back when newsstands still existed. And I'm looking at guitar magazines and I'm thinking about my own personal music taste and all the guitar obsessions that I had. And I was like, why isn't there a magazine for anyone, kind of like me, who's into all this other kind of weirder stuff, maybe cares less about the classic rock legends or some of the folks who just make guitar music. And, I wanted something that was a little bit more omnivorous, a little bit more eclectic and maybe focused more on the craft of guitar making a little bit than what was currently out there. And so with a buddy of mine, Michael Simmons, who was my original partner in 2005, we started this sort of I'm holding this copy just because it's like right next to me. It's not the newest one, but we decided to create like our Dream Guitar magazine, which was more of a keepsake than a throwaway magazine, and filled with articles that were evergreen, interviewing people who are both, legends of the acoustic and electric world, but also builders and young up-and-comers and folks who are just doing really interesting things with fretted instruments. And that was 2005 that we started it. And, over the course of 20 plus years now, we've launched podcasts like you were referring to. We have an event in Chicago now, but everything is, hopefully appeals to the guitar people out there who just love the instrument so much. They don't have to be pro players, but they just want to learn as much as humanly possible and geek out on how gear is made, how great records have been produced, things like that.
I'll come back to the Amazon thing very briefly because, why not touch on it now that I was looking back not long ago at my past order history, and it went back into the late 90s, and most of it was CDs. So what you were doing is what got me, put Amazon on my radar. So as you were influencing me even back then.
Okay, sure.
But that was one of the things I get a sense of when I'm listening to you. There's such an honesty about the way you engage with, whoever you're talking about, be it the people on podcasts that write in, be it the guests you have on. And I always got a sense that there's this side of you that, much like us, would just kind of geek out at, whatever is offered there in that guitar world.
Yeah, geeking out is my specialty. And, when it comes to interviews, I sort of have tossed out the rule book of having outlines or any preconceived notion of where we're going to go. At this point, having interviewed lots of my music heroes and lots of people who end up becoming my music heroes, my goal is to just kind of have a cool conversation and learn something about somebody that maybe hasn't been shared before.
As someone who's not as familiar as Mike is, but like Mike and Jonathan, actually, we have a bit of a classical guitar background. Do you know? Can you list maybe some highlight interviews of builders of classical guitars?
Oh man, of classical guitars? No, I'll be honest. Classical guitar is a universe unto itself, and most of our readership are acoustic and electric steel string players. Okay. And we struggle sometimes with figuring out that blend because, if it's a great story, I want to feature it in the pages of our magazine, but I also know that, a typical classical guitar connoisseur isn't going to buy a magazine that's 110 pages of non-classical guitar coverage. There are a few exceptions, but yeah, we haven't really, I can't think, we've definitely documented Hausers and we've definitely documented older classical guitars of note. I can't think of any recent stories we've done with current nylon string builders, I'm sad to say.
No, that's fine. And that kind of speaks to the let's call it a focus of your journal. I mean, it is, as you described it, as eclectic and evergreen, and you're interviewing a variety of people, but there is kind of like a frame around what you're trying to do, what you're trying to present.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I even can define it. We used to, when we'd go to the NAMM show in January, the big instrument trade show, one of our pitch slogans was always like, well, this is a magazine for the Collings owners of the world, with Collings being a very high-end good electric and acoustic guitar brand and mandolin brand out of Austin, Texas. And we have, probably to the detriment of, I'm sure some people roll their eyes when they see a banjo story in the Fretboard Journal. Like, really? I'm a guitar player. But, we do try to cover as much as we can from the world of fretted instruments. But yeah, I guess I need some more nylon string classical guitar writers who are pitching me on good stories. So reach out to me.
There's the offer right there for any of our listeners.
Totally. Yeah.
That diversity is very obvious in your podcast lexicon, if you will. You've kind of got the. How many do you have now? Actually, is it? I counted five or six.
It's a nebulous number because some of them kind of come and go. They're there when you need them. They're like the medication, the as needed medication. They're not. You don't take them every day. No, we have three that happen with a frequency that is the normal podcast frequency. We have the Fretboard Journal podcast where I just interview. Could be a builder, could be a player, could be sharing some news about stuff going on behind the scenes. That happens every week. We have the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast that you were kind of alluding to, which happens at this point every 2 weeks. We were weekly there for a hot second during COVID, but now we've kind of slowed down a little bit. But we are every 2 weeks. And then Michael Bashkin, an incredible guitar maker out of Colorado, does a podcast called Luthier on Luthier, where he is interviewing fellow guitar makers, some nylon string, some seal string, acoustic and electric, and kind of approaching it. I think most of the folks who listen to that show are kind of like myself, like flies on the wall. We aren't luthiers. We just want to hear two luthiers talk to each other, which is a great way to experience it. But yeah, we have those three shows, and then we have a podcast on steel, just steel guitars, and that's been super fun. Matt, our host, does them every 4 to 6 weeks. We have a couple others that kind of come and go as they please. There's no rhyme or reason why we do some of this stuff. It's just like, if it's a good story and it expands our storytelling, let's do it. I don't hold our host, under the fire of like, you got to churn one of these out every week or you're off the team or anything. So, yeah.
Well, that kind of answers one of my questions about how is it you have been able to so successfully cultivate this diverse audience. And you've got buy-in from everywhere and that flexibility and contributors. It just seems like a wonderfully welcoming process.
Thank you. Yeah, media is a tough game. It is for anything, guitar media, news media, you name it. And so we try to have fun with it. We try to be as inclusive as possible. And if somebody has a good idea, whether it's a podcast or an article for the magazine, if it makes sense, we want to pursue it, even if, we can't sell an ad against it or sponsorship or something like that.
How big of an operation is this umbrella of Fretboard Journal on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I'm here in Seattle, Washington. I've had this office for almost 15 years now. If anybody's ever seen our YouTube videos, like Bill Frisell has played in that corner, an album's worth of times, 10 or 15 times, sat in that chair. I have help here locally who Mike is someone who, if anyone's reached out to our customer service, has probably talked to. We're shipping some of the magazines. If people buy back issues, if people buy merch, we're shipping some of that from here. We also ship from our printer, which is back east. We have an art director who's located here in Seattle who does various other projects beyond ours. And then we have a couple of editors, Sophia being my assistant editor, who's in New York, who's by line, and she's been on our podcast a bunch too as well. She's incredible, and then a couple other helpers, and we all kind of work through the magic of Dropbox and Zoom calls like this one, and constant emails, and we're able to kind of put together an issue every 3 months, and then podcasts and all the other stuff. We obviously have writers and photographers scattered around the world, some of whom write one thing for the magazine, and then sadly we don't, we pay them and we don't hear from them again. They had like one good story in them, and then some folks who end up becoming like family, and you'll see their byline in almost every issue.
Do you happen to have like a few universals that you hold on to decide if it's a good story or not?
This is a very, we could go on for hours about this, because this is, what I spend most of my time doing. Obviously a story has to be well written. It has to be a writer who either has proven themselves or, is willing to have us, massage the story into something that's, great for print. We want to be proud of every story that we run in the magazine. But in terms of like what we greenlight versus what we don't, there's a balancing act. Obviously, if we're talking about music or a guitar maker, the end product has to be something that we truly, we don't want to promote embarrassing music, or, if it's not something we would use, if it's not something that we're like, oh my gosh, that guitar really is a work of art, we probably don't want to feature it. Being in the guitar space is interesting because there are tons of guitar podcasts, there are tons of guitar magazines, there are blogs, there are plenty of Reddit groups. We want to showcase stories that you're not going to find anywhere else, if at all possible. And so if somebody pitches us and it's just them hyping their buddy who made them a beautiful Telecaster, and we can read right through that, that's not for us. Like, go onto a forum, share that story. We want, kind of more of a human interest element too. So it's got to have some heart behind it and some soul behind it, as well as, ultimately a good piece of music or a good piece of musical gear as the output. And so you learn as an editor and as a writer, like, what stories have been told to death in every other magazine, what stories haven't. We don't write any gear reviews. We don't do any instruction. We just focus on storytelling. And it is very much, it's been called the National Geographic of guitar magazines. It's human interest stories. It's how did a luthier become the person they are today? What inspires them? Same goes with players. Like, what's the whole arc of the story here? And then obviously, being a very photo-rich magazine, like, we have to have some sort of image component too. Like, if you're just writing about someone and they don't want to have their picture taken, or there's no great pictures of the guitars in question, it doesn't really work so much for our format.
Got it. That's great.
You mentioned builders, you want to tell their story and everything, and I'm sure you've come across a lot of builders. So recently in our conversations, just privately, I am in the market, so I have to be careful of my, I don't know what you call it, selection bias or whatever, of, now my algorithms are showing me a lot of, builders, small builders, right? So but I can't help but thinking that over the recent years that there has been a pretty substantial influx of builders, small, electric, luthiers or whatever. And the backdrop to this conversation is always like, okay, are they increasing? What does that look like compared to, Fender, Gibson, whatever, even some of the bigger boutique builders, right? Mm-hmm. In your experience, has there been an uptick in, small builders, just people that no one would probably ever even, hear of if it's not regional, right? Or is that just selection bias? Yeah.
I mean, I think we all are getting gamed a little bit by the meta algorithms. And so if you're looking for a guitar, suddenly your feed is all guitars. And if you were looking for snow tires, your feed would probably be a bunch of car and driver posts. I think that the barriers to entry to be a luthier are lower than ever. There's, online instruction. There are these, kind of camps that luthiers do where people can come and learn how to build a guitar. There's obviously Roberto Venn and Brian Gallup and some of these more established guitar making schools. I think that right now there may be more luthiers than ever, but there definitely are more luthiers celebrating their work on Instagram and Facebook and through all these channels that we're addicted to with our phones. And so it feels like there's more builders than ever. I'm not sure that there are more than there were 10 years ago. Because, it's only getting more expensive to live, and it's only getting harder and harder to sell a guitar if you're a no-name builder or just starting out. And so I don't know. I think there have been these bubbles where, a lot of people got into archtop guitars for a while. A lot of people got into pedal making because pedals, 5-10 years ago were booming. And then, as with like the craft beer industry, like sometimes these things are cyclical, and the brewery you used to hang out with your family goes out of business, and you're like, what do you mean? It was so busy on Friday. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to figure out. There are definitely more places, like at NAMM, there's the Boutique Guitar Showcase, which is celebrating all these indie guitar makers from around the world at the same, trade show floor that the NAMM show takes place at. There are outlets like that where we're kind of hearing about more and more luthiers, even if I'm not sure there are more as a population. It's hard to know. But it's a cool time. I mean, if you want anything, you probably can find a builder who will meet your needs or take your money and do something really cool with it.
Yeah.
It's funny. Just you probably saw each of us light up when you were giving those examples, because you hit on some interest all of us have at some point there when you said the pedal thing. I mean, from listening to the Vintage Amp podcast. I really got inspired and wanted to be able to do more than basic maintenance. And, building pedals, start out with pedal kits from one of your sponsors, Amplified Parts.
Cool.
I started from there and then learned how to read schematics at the behest of Skip Simmons, and branched out to build my own, designs and circuits. Not that I was ever good at it, but it taught me a lot. And I've got the confidence to work on my own guitars and do more than basic maintenance on my amps. And even what you said about featuring a story about a luthier. I picked up the Luthier's Tool Box book that you published. This is another one of the side publications that you came out with, just because I'm probably never going to build one, but there's fascinating information to read about in here.
Thank you. I mean, that was a book that started out as a Fretboard Journal article from one of our contributors in Australia, and then it snowballed and spiraled out of control, and the original story pitch started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and every time I was slower and slower to respond to Jamie and his emails, like he added a new contributor, and then before we knew it, we had a book. And it was like, well, we could serialize this and chop it up and run it for the next 20 issues of the magazine, or we could just kind of make this kind of standalone thing, which is what we did. And the podcast that you're talking about, Mike, the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast. So this is sort of like, I'm the co-host, I'm the dumb guy, I'm the Andy Richter or the Ed McMahon for those of us of a certain age. I'm the straight guy, and then Skip Simmons, who I've known for 30 years, is an amp tech in California. And he's sort of the gruff but lovable tech that we all love. We have that mechanic or that amp tech or that luthier in our lives who, we all want to learn from, but sometimes are intimidated. And that show is kind of like car talk, but we actually share like deep knowledge. And Mike, you're like one of countless people who have taken that ball and run with it. And in the years of that podcast, I can't, even though I'm sitting on every episode, I don't think I've learned anything from that podcast. I certainly wouldn't know how to make a pedal or an amp. But all these other people, such as yourself, have like created careers and are like, oh, I'm now an amp tech because I've listened to 160 episodes and took to heart all the advice. And I'm like, more power to you, but I still don't want to be anywhere near a soldering iron. Like this is it's dangerous. So yeah, good. Thank you. You're our model listener.
Only one of many. It's amazing the buy-in from around the world, and I finally got the courage after I don't know how many episodes to write in, a question or a comment a time or two, and finally, like you said, the gruff but lovable, Skip. I had it in my mind that I'm going to write in something, I'm going to get the dreaded no or something like that. And it was funny because I wrote in and just made kind of a comment, and I thought, well, that went pretty well. And Skip said, you didn't give us the information we really needed. So I wrote back in and clarified. And once I did that, Skip said something to the effect like, well, Mike sounds like a cool guy. And I remember when I listened to that, it's like I was jumping up and down the seat of my car, like I've achieved something. Skip said that I'm a cool guy. I want the T-shirt
You
that
passed
says
the
that.
There you go. Yeah, we should give you a sticker or something.
you passed the skip test.
Totally.
Wow. Yeah.
One thing about you, that comment that you just said, Jason, about how a lot of your listeners have taken information and run with it, and I wonder if it's related in the way you have seen it is all, different, and I wonder if it's in part related to something that I've experienced in our very young podcast. In the sort of host or MC role, it's been hard for me to kind of process all the information that comes in while you're hosting and running things and managing. Do you find that you kind of miss out a bit in some of your shows?
Well, the AMP podcast, I mean, it might as well be in Esperanto. Half the technical terms that are used in that podcast go completely over my head, and half of our listeners are demanding that we get even more geeky. And so that is a common refrain. I try to balance the questions that are submitted to, have a little bit of a sequencing, like an album, where they have a little bit of a flow, and the ones that just look like completely in the weeds nerdy, I kind of will throw in a recipe. Sometimes people share their family recipes on the show. It's very odd if you've never listened to it. Anyways, yeah, I mean, in the throes of recording a podcast or doing an interview, a lot of information does just go straight past you. You're trying to live in the moment, and I try to be a good listener, but it's definitely hard, especially with some of the technical stuff that's thrown out. I don't even know what I'm reading half the time. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
I'm terribly sorry I haven't been able to make one yet. It seems like every time there's a Fretboard Summit, it's the weekend we start our orientation sessions for school. And I remember when Tommy Emmanuel was there a few years ago, I said, I have to make this one. This would be worth getting fired over, to go sit in. But the creativity you seem to exude with that grows all the time. Was it this last year, the Pinewood Derby incorporation? And
we're going to have a second Pinewood Derby this year. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it may have happened, but the idea of making like a walk-in room that was a pedal so you could see the way the circuits and things.
Yes. Yeah, we had, it kind of pivoted at the last minute, but we had kind of a broom closet that was a working pedal, basically.
Wow.
And so you kind of got to feel a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids moment, It's important. So the Fretboard Summit is this sort of like 3-ring circus that takes place in Chicago, always the third weekend in August, which is very inconvenient for many folks who have kids or work in schools. So I've heard that before. But yeah, we throw it at the Old Town School of Folk Music, and it's an incredible institution that's been there for decades. It's a big music school that has, everything from clawhammer banjo to contradancing to jazz guitar and vocal and kazoo and harmonica. And I mean, there's just thousands of students in Chicago that go through the Old Town School of Folk Music. It's a nonprofit. It's incredible staff. I'm so proud to be loosely associated with it. And we go in, they go dark every year for 1 week. And during that week, when all the classes are not happening because everyone's on summer break, we kind of swoop in and fill it with, not only guitar vendors who are trying to sell the instruments they made, but also classrooms that we, have workshops and clinics at, and sort of sometimes even like TED Talk type things. And then we have concerts at night. And then we also have this element of weirdness, for lack of a better word, where we do things like we invite all the legendary luthiers who are exhibiting their guitars. We ask them if they want to build a Pinewood Derby car and race them. And so you get these guitar makers who are, used to selling guitars for $10,000, putting just as much energy into the little $4 Pinewood Derby kit that I mailed to them. And last year we did this just as a grand experiment, and we had no idea just how many luthiers were really into it. I thought I'd have to explain what the Boy Scout Pinewood Derby race was. And I had to a few people, but, we had a builder make a working guitar, like literally put a pickup on the Pinewood Derby car, and was able to get 4 strings in tune. Chase Bliss, the pedal company, made a pedal car that was a working Pinewood Derby car that was an effects pedal. And then Peter Hendrickson of Hendrickson Amps made a working amp car. So we actually had like the whole signal chain there racing against each other. And people just went nuts with it. And we've done this, I've been to so many guitar shows. I'm sure you guys have as well. And I always feel a little awkward because sometimes I go to these guitar shows and I just want to hang out and have fun. I don't want to buy anything. And most guitar shows are pretty boring if you are not ready to write a big check for some guitar or don't want a horse trade or whatever. So it's super important to me selfishly to make a weekend where if you just want to go have fun and hang out with friends and drink beer and get inspired, see some great music, maybe take a class, I want your whole day to feel full. I don't want you to feel guilty or embarrassed that you're not in the market for a guitar. And so we have things like the Pinewood Derby. We've had, we had a game show where we did a spoof of the Iron Chef where 2 guitar makers had to build a parts caster in an hour with a pantry full of ingredients. That was our first year. We had an orchestra once where Bill Frisell was the conductor and everyone could play with Bill Frisell. We had like 65 people playing guitar alongside Bill Frisell. And every year I try to come up with something that nobody would have, thought of, mostly because these are crazy ideas that speak to the fun of like, hey, we're all guitar nerds here. Like, let's just put our guard down. We don't have to be cork sniffing the latest and greatest Brazilian rosewood guitar every week. Like we can not be serious for 3 days.
Sounds awesome.
We've gotten, like I said earlier, incredible buy-in from all over the place. I mentioned amplified parts. I'm guilty of also one of your sponsors, Barry Gresbick.
Yeah, he was just on your show.
Yeah, and I just, guitars, and it's amazing. And I have to now have a Carlton case, so I've got one of those coming next month. And heck, when I'm in Seattle towards the end of the year, I'm definitely going to Emerald City Guitars.
Sure, and stop by here too if you're.
I would love to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's most brands, most advertisers, people in the industry, a guitar magazine, they can kind of picture it in their head. And we try to be a little left of the dial or however you want to put it. And so the brands that have supported us and kind of get what we're about have been, our lifeblood, and they've been so cool. And, sometimes the biggest brands, I don't think they even know we exist, but sometimes they do. And so it's somehow has worked out for 20 plus years. I thought it was funny. We just had Yamaha commit to coming back to the summit this August. And it was, they agreed to their space and all their, dotted the I and crossed the T's and all this stuff. But then they said, also, can we get 2 Pinewood Derby car kits? And I was just like, how beautiful is that like this multi-billion-dollar company, they're really pushing for 2 Pinewood Derby entries for the 2026 Fretboard Summit,
right?
As opposed to just 1. So I will oblige and send them 2. But yeah, it was just funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, you do stay so busy. It's pretty evident with all that you have going on. Do you have any secrets for a healthy work-life balance? I hear you referencing on the podcast sometimes various passions you have. In fact, I remember on one of them you skipped off to Peru for a better part of a month to chaperone your son, I think. And did it leave you feeling like you're not doing something you should be doing, or any tips you have or anything with experience?
Oh God,
would be welcome to hear.
Is this the midlife crisis podcast? Do we segue to that? Because I could talk for hours about that. My son was a teenager who went to this school that had a global studies trip for a month at the end of 8th grade, and so I agreed because he wanted me to chaperone. So I that trip, which was almost a month or almost a year ago to this day, it was a couple weeks from now, but it was a year ago, was transformative for me because I am the consummate masochistic small business owner where on my honeymoon I had a laptop and I was checking emails and answering customer service requests and trying to project into the world that I was never on vacation and that I was always available. And so that trip really forced me, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to bullshit my way through that anymore. I knew I needed to check out because I was going to be in Peru making sure 40 kids stayed alive, for a month with a bunch of other chaperones. I had to force myself to finally get some help. Sophia Wolfson, who I referenced earlier, who's sort of my assistant editor, I brought her on anticipating that trip. I got some help here at the office. At the age of almost 52, I'm starting to learn how to delegate more and to focus on what is important in the big picture and not chase all the shiny objects that a lot of us tend to chase, that, some of which tend to just be distractions from the real work that needs to be done. So yeah, I have no kernels of wisdom. I'm still much a work in progress. I'm trying to follow my heart. I'm trying to think bigger picture and not get caught in, I am on social media a lot less. I found that, I used to tell myself that I needed to be there as a small business owner and posting once or twice a day. And as the algorithm changes, as consumer habits change, as my habits changed, I'm like, you know what? Nobody seems to notice if I don't post for 3 days on the Fretboard Journal Instagram account. I'm still alive. Everybody's still getting their magazine, but I don't need to constantly do it just to do it. And for some reason, the AMP podcast has its own Instagram page, which just hit 10,000 followers, and I barely ever post on that. Like, I post twice a month at most. So for whatever reason, pictures of old amplifiers and PAs, Instagram seems to want to share to a bunch of you all, but I sadly am not posting a lot content-wise as the Vintage Amps podcast curator. But yeah, I think you just got to it helps to have some interests that aren't in guitar for folks who are in the guitar space. When I'm not traveling to Peru, which is probably for the rest of my life, I love getting outside. I love skiing. I love trail running, just basically fast walking, jogging on hiking trails. I do a lot of that. And I find that sometimes my best ideas for work happen on these, 90-minute drives up to the ski hill, or, when I'm sitting on a chairlift waiting to go ski another run. And so it's important for me to kind of be able to do that. I do have a kid, so that takes up a lot of my time, and a wife. And but yeah, I don't know that I have any great wisdom for anybody out there. It's just be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Try not to get distracted. I don't know.
All of that is inspirational in and of itself, I can say.
Well,
I don't know.
And the more important question that I have the same cans that you do.
Oh yeah.
So the thing that's on my mind, how many times have you replaced your ear covers here?
Oh, I haven't. Maybe I'm not recording enough.
Maybe I've got too much acid in my skin.
Well, you're like Jerry Garcia. Didn't he have to change his strings every 20 minutes?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's you. It's you with the ears.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite the turn, just because I took it to midlife crisis.
It was getting too close to home, Just,
Was it?
yeah.
So for some strange reason, when I used to live in Boston, the bass strings of my guitar would die. I could actually hear them dying within an hour's time of playing. Like, I remember one time in a concert, I restrung my guitar right before a concert, and I could just hear them getting deadened as the concert went on. But down here, we all live in Mississippi, and there's just something about the weather such that my bass strings last a much longer time. There's something about what happens to me when I'm up north.
Oh, it's you. It's not the strings.
Same strings. I mean,
Yeah,
same brand, pretty much.
that's wild.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
that's it, Jonathan. If you lived on the West Coast, your can covers would last a lot longer.
I don't know.
Motivation to move right there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, I hate to do this, but I'm going to take another turn.
Oh, sure.
And we're all talking these days about what's happening with AI, and everybody is feeling it in some corner of their lives. What you have a unique perspective, I think, not only being in journalism, but your passions as a musician. There's a lot of crossover, I think, where AI has an impact on a lot of those industries. Do you have any particular thoughts, concerns, rants on how AI is impacting the direction of what we're doing now?
Oh man, I mean, this is a whole another topic. I am not the most, I'm not a coder who's working with AI, every single day and creating tools that, have eased my workload all that much, but I do use it. And I think it is a tool, I think we're talking about, taking care of yourself as a small business owner or as you're kind of going through midlife or whatever. Like, I think everybody could look at a lot of the time they spend on their laptop or their phone doing kind of menial tasks and go, there's AI probably could do this for me and probably better. As an example, a part of my job, thankfully not a large part, is like dealing with spreadsheets. We export a spreadsheet and send it to our printer with the 10,000 names who are going to get the next Fretboard Journal issue. I am not a good Excel spreadsheet jockey. I am very rudimentary. I never bothered to watch the Lynda tutorials or YouTube videos on how to do formulas or anything, but I can upload that spreadsheet to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever. I'm using Claude right now, and have it clean everything up for me and make sure there's no duplicates and do a pretty good job, better than I would be able to do. So there's little things like that I think it will become a seamless part of our habits. It's not evil. It could turn evil, and everything can be evil if you let it be. A hammer can hammer a nail or can break a window or a guitar, even worse. And so I'm viewing it as a tool. I am excited and also apprehensive. I'm mostly, rolling my eyes a lot at just the giant bubble that is happening economically, where you're kind of like, it feels like the .com days where it's like, really, is the food delivery service that's not the best known one going to last 2 years, and is the AI company that's the company that's trying to build itself on AI that seems like it's kind of just all smoke and mirrors, is it really going to be around? Like, there's a lot of money floating around and getting invested in AI branded things that I don't think will last. It's not for me to figure out. I'm not, a venture capitalist or anything, but I do use it. I am worried as a journalist, as a storyteller, AI is just going to infiltrate all that we do more. It's going to make music that, probably gets heard more often than some of the music that our friends and favorite musicians make. It's going to generate stories for news outlets. I'm not necessarily speaking about guitar-related news outlets, although I'm sure it's inevitable with some that, instead of a writer writing a press release or talking about a new pedal that comes out or whatever, I'm sure AI is going to do almost as good a job, at least at first, as a human on some of the like low-hanging fruit journalism. And so, the challenge, it's always been a challenge, but the challenge I'm giving myself is like, okay, well, how can we be even more human and have more soul and have, more of an authentic voice than whatever Claude or ChatGPT or whomever churns out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting times. I don't know how I don't know what it bodes for most music makers, most guitar people. I just know that, it does have the capability, if we want to think positively, of taking a lot of work off our plates that frankly none of us are, we're meant to do. A lot of the, as a small business owner, I think the universal truth is like, we hate bookkeeping. We hate I'm sure there's some small business owners who got into it because they love bookkeeping, but I'm not one of those people. If AI wants to help me with things like bookkeeping or, that level of stuff, I'm all for it. I don't want it to replace my favorite musicians. I don't want it to replace my favorite writers. I do worry a little bit about, Instagram and Facebook, of just like more and more of my feed is clearly AI generated stuff, and they're not hiding it. They even put little AI bots in Facebook groups now, to like ask me a question kind of stuff. For those of us old enough to remember MySpace, like, there was an inflection point with MySpace where it just felt so generic and so ad and meme generating, where you're like, these aren't even my friends anymore. And I feel like we're getting pretty darn close to that with Facebook and Instagram. So I don't know if there's going to be some knight in shining armor social feed that's going to replace those, or they're just going to clean it up, or it's just we're all going to get dumber and share AI generated videos. But I don't know. Like, yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I have no idea.
You kind of alluded to what I've said a few times, that in so many ways, usually it's just an inarticulate rage, that we're gonna, there's gonna be this group that pushes for more and more, for lack of a better phrase, certified human generated art, whatever, that's, of course it's a tool. It's great. I like to use it for certain applications, but and I forgot what you said earlier, but it was right on the money. Just it should inspire us to create things that are exclusively us, exclusively human, right? And I think there's going to be a community that will just slowly, rise in rebellion to it,
Yeah. I mean, it's such a tricky thing. I mean, we just had a bluegrass festival here 2 weeks ago called Wintergrass. That's this like huge, bluegrass festival in Bellevue, Washington, about 30 minutes that way. And we do a 2-hour workshop called the Vintage Instrument Workshop, where we get all of our local collector friends who have these like $100,000 Martins, and we put them all on stage, and then we have like 3 players, 4 players kind of do like tasting notes. Everybody plays a song and then reflects on the instrument they played, and it's this geeky thing that, a few hundred people at Wintergrass like clamor for every year. I always film it, and I'm always then like, what the hell am I going to do with this 2-hour long video? I mean, I still post videos to YouTube once in a while, but like to edit a 2-hour long video with 3 musicians and 100 instruments with 3 cameras that probably weren't all graded to the same color profile, like it's a pain in the ass. And so you can bet I've been looking at AI to edit that video. And so that's an interesting thing where like a human needed to think of that idea. Humans are playing those instruments. If I didn't have a little AI help to edit that video, it may never come out. It might just be too much work for your beleaguered publisher over here. And so, there's this like compromise thing, but ultimately I want the content to be human generated in my life. And, I want the actual human connection. I think that's one of the interesting insights I've had from doing the Fretboard Summit for the last 4 years in Chicago, is just like, even maybe especially coming out of COVID and when everybody was on these Zoom calls, there's now this real hunger to actually connect with people face to face and hang out and actually, share a drink and a story with somebody and trade guitars. And so, as long as that can continue, it's great. But yeah, I mean, AI is, I mean, if you make your dream guitar record and the thing that's your stumbling block is you don't know what the cover should be, I mean, I guess using AI to make a cover, if it gets your art out into the world, is not the worst thing. It's better than you suppressing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It would also be helpful for AI to help us find the audience.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, I don't know about for finding like music listeners, but it is, from what I understand, replacing a lot of people who were paid well to kind of do like Facebook marketing, targeted marketing stuff, because it really can behind the scenes just do all the things the human would have faster. So who knows?
Yeah.
Well, Jason, this has all been so incredibly insightful. I know we have probably monopolized way more of your time than you intended. You were so kind to adjust your schedule
Oh,
to
no,
a
it's
time
fine.
zone. But before we sign off, I just wonder if there's anything you might want to share with our listeners, anything you have coming up that you may want to promote, or anything that you would like to get out there for us.
Oh man, well, thank you. Obviously, the Fretboard Journal is a keepsake print magazine. If no one has seen it, I hope you can. But we have tons of content online, including all these podcasts we've been referencing. If anybody just wants to kind of dive in and see what we're about, and if you're not tired of my voice, I'm on all these podcasts for the most part. And then if anybody wants to make the trek to Chicago, it's August 20th to 22nd this year. If you go to fretboardsummit.org, you can learn about that. If you just want to go guitar shopping, if you're the kind of person I'm not, we do have just like $20 tickets at the door for people who just want to go guitar shopping. But if you want to experience the Tommy Emmanuels and the Bill Frisell's and the Pinewood Derbies and the parties and all that fun stuff, like, we do have a 3-day pass option that gets you into everything, including the guitars for sale. So you can kind of choose your own adventure at that. And yeah, that's kind of all I got.
Well, Jason, that's a lot. We thank you for all that you do and wish you continued success.
Oh, thank you guys so much. And congrats on getting the podcast off the ground.
Well, thank you very much. You've been an inspiration on my end, definitely. So thank you.
All right. Hopefully it's the first of many visits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was such a good chat with Jason Verlinde of Fretboard Journal. Certainly appreciative of his time, and I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and all the other places where you get your podcast. And feel free to drop a comment in any of our videos or send an email to pluckthatguitarpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.